If you want to rebrand and become completely unrecognizable in this upcoming year, this is the video for you. We're going to talk about how to rebrand yourself as a female founder. I'm talking about photo shoots. I'm talking about campaigns. I'm talking about aesthetics. We are going to step into this new year with a completely reinvented version of ourselves, and it's going to help us make the most amount of money we ever have. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jasmine. I lead the creative agency trusted by hundreds of female founders who have collectively generated over $50 million in revenue with us. And let's talk about one of the primary strategies we've been seeing the top brands implement when it comes to making more sales, staying relevant in the current market, and leveraging their current audience and even expanding to new ones while releasing new products or new services or even repositioning what they've already had. And that is through rebranding. So rebranding might not necessarily be a foreign concept to you. It's definitely something that's being talked a lot more about in marketing. Just even common audience members can spot whether someone has rebranded or reshifted the way that they operate. But let's talk about what's going to make a rebrand truly look unrecognizable in 2026, how it's going to help you step into the best version of your female founder era. As a creative director, the number one thing I normally want to really get specific on when rebranding with a female founder is their signature style. We've seen this before where either a lot of creatives have that same design style that they try to implement with other founders, or we have seen the issue of female founders not knowing what their signature style is, so they end up looking like everybody else. But after working with us, I want female founders to truly know who they are and how they can fully show up as themselves in a signature way. I want our female founders to be comparable to big brands and instantly recognizable and memorable. And what it takes to step into that version of themselves is actually recognizing that their current version is outdated. The current version is something that they've outgrown and they're ready to move forward from. So although with this rebrand, we're going through this like Princess Diary style makeover, we don't necessarily want to trash the strengths of what has worked in the past. Most of the female founders we've worked with have made money with their existing brand, but they're realizing there's a cap in potential based on their current aspirations, their dreams, what they want to accomplish with their business, and really the money that they want to make. So because of this, we want to evaluate the foundations of what have worked. Not necessarily just thinking about the aesthetics, because we always want to kind of reimagine the aesthetics in a new light, but part of thinking about what is their signature style, what is their like celebrity it factor, what is kind of their essence, is figuring out what do people like about their brand currently. And this could be how authentic it is, how welcoming it is, how warm or calming, how confident and playful. So when evaluating our clients' brands, and part of our intake process is actually figuring out what are your current brand strengths and then what are the weak areas? What are the objections that you're getting around why people maybe don't want to buy from you? What is a disconnect with your brand right now? What is something you actually don't like anymore? Or you realize I picked that color just because I liked it and I realize now I don't want it everywhere. Or I did that photo shoot years ago when I literally didn't have an idea of what I was doing and I was just showing up, but now I have a better idea of how I want to present myself in my next one. Those are all things that we collect so that we can reimagine, reposition, and honestly redefine for you. When we're finding our client's signature style, we want to define what those words mean in their own terms. So for example, when I think about a playful brand, or maybe when you think about a playful brand, we might be thinking balloons, we might be thinking confetti, we might be thinking joy, we might be thinking bold colors. But what that looks like for our client, what that looks like for us, what that looks like for you can be represented in so many different ways. Trust me, if you go on Pinterest and just type playful branding, you'll see all of the different looks. If you type luxury branding, you'll see all of the different looks. And here's the thing, most people think that high-end branding needs to be black and white and mysterious and super luxurious, right? We're thinking about the high heels, the suits, and the blazer, but high-end could just mean high quality, detail-oriented, intentional in a way that that means and looks like for our client. So that is always our goal. We always say our signature style and our unique approach isn't just one design look, it's actually taste. So again, what this looks like is defining what that means for our actual client. So even if they're unclear about what their vision is, how they want to show up, how they want to be visible, what their vibe is going to look like, getting information like this and being able to redefine it and then present it to them as an option is how they can get one step clearer. Before I jump into our kind of signature style, like formula, if you will, we also like to take into consideration who is the audience that they're actually trying to reach and what their long-term business goals are. They don't have to be super specific, but for a lot of our clients, they want to release a product in a couple of years. They want to write a book. They want to be on a stage. They want to host an event. And so because they want to position themselves in this light in the near future, it's really important that we consider this for their branding right now so that it can set them up to position themselves this way. And that way they don't have to go through another rebrand in a year once they're ready to actually fulfill those goals. And so this is where the creative direction comes in, and sometimes the ideas that our clients have might need a little bit of challenging, or we might need to get a little bit more clear on how this serves the ultimate purpose. So for example, some of our clients start making their own Pinterest boards before even working with us, or see inspiration online and immediately start pointing fingers at what their inspiration is, who they want to look like, and how they want to present themselves. But when we actually look at their intake answers and we actually look at the strategy, we realize the way that they're trying to show up is not necessarily what they're telling us they want out of their rebrand. So an example of this is another creative that we worked with who literally told us in her intake form she did not want to look like other designers. She did not want to be basic. She really wanted to be outside of the box. She wanted to be respected in her industry, and she did not want to be doing what other people in her niche were doing. But when she gave us her Pinterest board, guess what? It looked like every other person in her niche. And I respectfully called her out on it. So I told her, the minute that I look up your niche on Pinterest, what you're telling me you want is all of the results that are coming up. And so instead of doing this and making you predictable and maybe even basic for your niche, here's what we pulled from your intake form. We know you want it to be bold. We know we want to be creative. I know you wanted to lean into your artistic side. And here's how we translated that for you. And because of this, we came up with an entirely brilliant photo shoot concept that involved paint, that involved bright colors. And we were able to pair it beautifully on her website to speak to her audience, which is other creatives. And because of the formula I'm about to share, we were able to come up with her own signature style, her own way of showing up in a way that is truly unique to her, and she can show up confidently with, knowing that she's the only one that has this approach. So of course, the first thing we want to dictate with your signature style is the tone and the perception based on what you're telling us you want the rebrand to be. We take into consideration how you see the rebrand as successful, what your audience has liked about your current branding, what you're finding to be weak in your brand right now, and of course, who is the ideal person you want to reach and what is the perception you want them to have. So in this specific client's instances, we know that she wanted to reach other creatives. We know it's other creatives who are also following other creatives, so it's really important for her to stand out. We also know that she wanted to be welcoming, she wanted to be approachable, but she still wanted to look like an expert. She still wanted to be taken seriously and have that authority, which brings me to the next step of now figuring out the visual aesthetic with that. And again, I know so many people go on Pinterest and type up their niche and type up photo shoot ideas, brand ideas, and that is such a good way to start. I sometimes do this too, but I do this to figure out what is actually common so I can go against it. What is actually common so I can find gaps in between. And what I like to do is pull inspiration from outside of the client's direct industry. So in this specific case, we still leaned a little bit more on the creative side, but we refined what that looked like, and we took a more abstract and minimalist approach versus the traditional approach, which is putting things up on a wall. I look at inspiration from other magazine covers, what's currently trending. And even if our clients aren't necessarily models or in that industry or in that space, we can still take elements that we like and influence it from there. So this is how I start, by creating the overall visual aesthetic. And it could be this massive big board that's filled with so many different ideas. And this will allow me to move into the next step of coming up with your signature style, which of course is the creative direction. Sometimes I start off with the creative direction first, and sometimes I start with the visual aesthetic first. It just depends on how much information we're getting from the client and how many ideas we can come up with beforehand. So when it comes to the creative direction, it's actually finding the patterns and the common things between all of the things that we're putting together and thinking of maybe 3 or 4 main approaches that we want to do for this client. So we knew for this client, we wanted to highlight like kind of abstract paint approaches. We know we wanted to do a lot of color blocking. We know we wanted to use oversized imagery. And the way that we come up with the creative direction is also thinking about not just how the branding is used, but how the branding photos on the website are going to be used in the marketing strategy. So finding creative directions is really important to think about format, to think about flexibility, and to think, of course, how to make it unique and usable. A lot of times we can come up with a more complex creative direction or a more simple creative direction. It's not that one is better than the other, but it's also thinking about the client's business and how they plan on utilizing that creative direction moving forward. Lastly, we want to think about the founder energy. What is kind of like that flair, that it factor that we want to implement into the signature aesthetic style that we're producing. So for this client specifically, she's always played it safe. She's always played with neutrals. She kind of has always just kind of been shying away and kind of a little bit behind the scenes, but she was ready to be showing up as a founder that's ready to be the face of her brand. We knew that the posing at the photo shoot would come in here. We knew that some of the colors that we might be playing with would come up here. And the way that we pull this out is we have some questions in our intake that could allude to this, basically being like, what is your energy like when you're on a client call? What would clients say about you and your personality? And you might be thinking that this has nothing to do with the actual business or product, but it is relevant because in this specific case, we are building a founder-based brand where the founder is essentially the main main marketer. The founder is the product. They're the ones delivering the service. And so because of this, we still want it to, of course, tie to the rebrand in a professional way. We want them to still be able to campaign in this way, but we're able to kind of pull out those hidden elements that maybe as a founder, you've been shying away from, you forgot about yourself, or maybe it's things that you realize you haven't been doing publicly, but you only do behind the scenes. So those are the elements that we can pull in and make part of your signature style so that we can put it out there. After finding your signature style, of course, this is where the fun elements can come in of planning a shoot, the styling, the location. We put together those creative direction pieces that we're talking about and putting them together into like baseline brand assets. I'm talking about brand guidelines, fonts, color pairings, font pairings, and of course, building all of that together in a beautiful, sellable experience on your website. And then finally deciding how we want to use all of the moving pieces to actually implement your marketing strategy so you can make your rebrand ROI. And of course, this looks like planning an entire campaign so that the rebrand reveal isn't just one single moment. It feels like something you can carry forward in your business. And we have a whole separate process in how we implement this with clients, outlined all in our campaign crash course, which is your 60-minute guide to creating your next sellout campaign so that you can be the celebrity of your niche. You can get that in the link in the show notes. But overall, when we're thinking about how a client came to us and how they leave with all of their assets, their look, their feeling, their identity, they truly feel unrecognizable. They truly feel like they're ready to finally take those risks. They're finally ready to show up more confidently. They're finally ready to make the claims that they have been wanting to make, to say the things that they've been shying away from, to show up as consistently as they've been wanting to. And of course, it definitely helps that they have cohesive assets that they can use in a routine way. But this is what it truly takes to become unrecognizable. It's not about soft launching one little thing or changing one little thing of your brand. It's truly stepping into who you were always meant to be and creating a signature style that you can become renowned by and actually people can recognize as your own.